Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner Health. I'm here with my co-host Andy, Coach Andy, the unconditional coach. I am laughing just because I had a little bit of tech difficulties, like seconds before going live, which is fun. Hello, everyone. My name is Leslie Gadet. I am a mindset and emotional awareness coach for women. And I help my clients achieve self-awareness around their emotional triggers so they have better responses to those moments. Well, when your emotions can get the best of you. And so that's what I love to help my clients, become more self-aware of that because when you do, you have a better chance of maybe not letting your barometer go from 0 to 1,000 in just a second. So that's who I am. Hey, Andy. Hello.
Hey Leslie, how you doing?
I'm great.
I am Andy Lidstone, the unconditional coach. I help people find why they don't have the life they want, and typically it's due to a set of boundaries that they don't know they've crossed of their own boundaries. Um, I have been working a lot around boundaries. I'm creating a course for boundaries. I've been doing a lot with boundaries, and I didn't really realize until recently how much of an important thing that has been for most of my clients. And so now I'm starting to embrace that really as one of my key focuses. And actually, I call them unconditional boundaries, which is perfect for why I'm calling myself the unconditional coach as well. And it really is the reason we don't have the lives we want, because we generally don't even honor our own boundaries. So yeah, that's what I do, and I help people figure that out and learn to honor themselves and their boundaries.
I love that. And funny thing is, I actually experienced something this week. So it's going to be very cool to actually get into it.
Right.
And I have to actually just say, I have one more boundary I think I need to put up. It's like it seems that every time that we get on here, we are matching somehow. So I don't know how that's happening. Just saying. But yeah, so. I
That's
just
awesome.
thought, yeah, I just thought I would point that out because somehow our colors are really matching well today. So
Yes, and they often do, as you've pointed out many times.
yes,
And we
so
don't do that on purpose.
no. In fact, I'm not calling him up, and he's not calling me up asking me what are you wearing
Right.
for the live.
As a matter of fact, in this case, the first words we said to each other was after we went live.
Yeah, exactly.
So we didn't have a chance to plan anything at all.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
That's so
funny.
much fun. But yeah, so today we're going to be talking about something which I recently experienced this week, which I think is so interesting that
Hmm.
these get planned out prior. Like we don't plan out what we're going to talk about necessarily as far as scripting it, but we do have an idea of the topic and what we're going to cover a little bit of that. So
Right.
today we're talking about isolation versus independence, and I love this topic because, like I said, this week has been a little challenging for myself around this particular topic, and it's
Right.
something that I had actually years ago before I became a life coach, before I actually really started going through self development. It was something that I had typically my way of dealing with whether it was trauma, whether it was any type of, I don't know, maybe feelings of guilt or shame or judgment against someone else or holding grudges was, or if I had issues like my own personal issues that I wasn't quite sure I was able to ask for help, I would isolate myself.
Right.
And I was only hurting me. And I
Yes.
think a lot of people don't realize that in the isolation process, it's not about really us staying away from other people in that it helps us, but it actually harms us more because we're leaving ourselves more vulnerable by not asking for whether it's just someone to hold space for you or if it's someone to listen to you or someone to give you advice. But it really, if I, like I said, this is something that I still have to work on. I find myself getting these things happen. And of course, I catch myself because I'm in this space. But I can really relate that if you, as a listener, if you've ever had those moments where, you felt like you couldn't reach out to the people in your life, or you couldn't lean on anyone for support because you felt maybe that you were bothering them. And I think that's one of the things that
Yeah.
really was my driving force, was that I didn't want to burden anyone with mine. Plus, there's also the embarrassment factor of being embarrassed to share things about myself personally with people, even if they were close to me. And so my
Yeah.
usual way was isolating myself from others. And I still catch myself having to realize, okay, my I have just the way of just saying, I know I just have to ask myself, what do you need in this moment? And if that means just taking some time for myself, that's fine too. But
Yes.
I don't create so much space between myself and other people that I'm isolated and feeling vulnerable and lonely and sad and
Right.
unsure and all of those negative thoughts and feelings that can go through your head. So yeah, definitely a great topic this week.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of my favorites also because, much like what you've just described, it's something I found myself in my past doing that a lot. Not so much because I didn't want to bother people or because I didn't feel I you know or could find the help, or because I wanted to just stay away from people. It's that I felt I didn't deserve the help. I felt people didn't want to help me, so I wouldn't. It's not so much that I didn't want to bother them. I felt that they would actually say no if I asked. So and so I just wouldn't bother. Like I just wouldn't. It would be more of a hassle to me to ask for help and get a no than it was just to pretend it's a no and never ask.
Right.
Um, so and it still leads to the same thing. We're still isolating ourselves, and it's still harmful and hurtful to ourselves. And sometimes I would isolate to show somebody how much I'm hurt. And how much do you think they can see me when I'm isolating? How much do you think they can see my emotions when I'm isolating myself from them? They don't see how much I'm hurting. They might guess that I'm probably hurting because I'm usually around them a lot and I'm suddenly not, but they're not going to guess why or if I am or what's going on. They don't know what's going on because I'm isolating for them. So I was often just making things worse for myself by keeping myself away from people. And then the other side of that I came to in the last couple of years, especially in this industry, in this space, this coaching world, this personal development, this self development world, we are a group of people who like to help each other. So if I'm isolating myself from all of my friends in the coaching world, like you and my other friends, then not only am I isolating myself from you, am I harming myself, but I'm also then denying you and my coaching friends, all of the people that I know who want to help. I'm denying you the ability to help someone because here I am wanting help, needing help, crying for help, but not asking anybody. So the thing that we want to do, the skill that we love the most, the reason we're doing what we're doing the most, I am now denying people that opportunity to help someone out. In this case, help me out. So it's actually I've realized recently that for me it's been a selfish act. I'm really holding myself away from other people because I have plenty of people in my life who want to help me with all kinds of different things, and yet when I isolate, I'm choosing to not let them do the thing they want to do most, which is help other people. I love to help other people, so I can just imagine how much my other coaching friends love to help other people. It's my favorite thing in the world to do. It's the thing that changed my life in such dramatic ways. So, why would I not let other people have that same gift? And so, for me, isolating recently has been more of a: Am I going to choose to sit here and be selfish when I have an entire community of people, you know, double handfuls of people who want to help, whose purpose in life is to make somebody else's life better, and the thing that they want most to do is to help me out, help me or other people that they know, and all I have to do is call them up and say, "Would you please do the thing you love to do with me?" And
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to say no. the most that they're going to say is, "Can you give me a few minutes?"
Yeah.
Right? That's the worst that anybody's going to say. So it's it's isolating has been something that has is that I did struggle with a lot, and like you said, it's something because we're in this world, right? We do the work. It's not something we struggle with as much as we used to. You and I have been collaborating for months now, and although I've had some isolation periods in there, there's rarely ever been a week gone by that you and I haven't talked at least a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we still live in this world, but that doesn't mean that we never feel those feelings or have those cravings. Maybe we don't isolate for weeks or months at a time the way we might have used to, but we still do it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It might only be for a few hours or a few days, but it still happens.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we're working on. That's the brilliant thing. And the thing that I love most about this conversation is the contrast between that and being just independent. And that's the conversation I want to go through. So I'm looking forward to it. Like you've said, this is one of my favorite topics. And yes, we came up with a topic months ago. So it's convenient that we've been having this discussion because, like you say, it's something that both of us have gone through very, very recently. So yeah.
And the funny thing is, when I think about the differences, because like there's differences obviously between isolation and independence, and how, and I think it's really, I think it's independent isolate. I don't know like how I could word it, but it's either you put yourself into isolation on purpose, for one of two reasons, whether it's because of pride, and maybe embarrassment, scared to ask, maybe thinking you're not worthy and deserving, all of those emotional things that make you start, getting into your head, your self-talk. And then there's the other side of it. You might isolate yourself out of pride because you think that nobody else could have the answers. If you can't figure it out yourself, how could anyone else possibly be able to help you? And I think for me, I've really been more on the first one where, and I'll get to my most recent, but my very first realization that I had been doing it was years ago, before I even got into coaching, before I even knew about the self-development world. I really didn't know much about it, and I know a lot of people still don't. But for me, it was, going through some things. My husband had a really bad car accident. He had lost part of his business, due to him going into deep depression. It put me into deep depression. There's a lot of things going on. I'm just going to be real, just because so that you can understand the realness of this conversation, and the experience. And so, for me, my way was I just went in, like I went inside, and I felt like I wanted to disappear. I didn't want anyone to see me, because I just felt like on the outside, everyone was seeing this bubbly person. Whenever I'd be in contact with people, it was always happy. How are you? I'm good. But I was always hiding this pain, and I didn't share it with anyone. And the people that would be asking it wasn't really anyone that was really super close. So it was like work colleagues, people like that. But I started isolating myself from some of my friends, that were, I was living in Florida at the time. And so most of the people I knew that were really long-term friends for me were in Canada, where I had moved from, like, it only been, I guess, it was a few years, almost 10 years. We've been living in Florida. And then one of my friends, she actually tracked me down through finding out from a family member of mine my phone number, and called me and just was saying, I was worried about you. I hadn't heard from you. I didn't know how to get a hold of you. I got your phone number from this person, and are you okay? And that was I just really, really want to really let people know how good you feel when you know somebody cares. You don't realize how much you need it until someone is offering that. And so that was my very first time realizing that I had been punishing myself
Yeah.
because I had isolated myself away from everyone, no phone calls, people would email me and I would ignore them. And people would call and I'd ignore their calls. It would go through to voicemail. And so, yeah, it was an eye-opening moment. That was the first time. But as I've been going through this growth, this self-development world and coaching and that, I still have these moments. And so, recently I've had another, I wouldn't say episode, but it's been an experience. And I've had those thoughts and those feelings. And my go to now is no longer am I isolating, but I ask myself, what do I need right now to help me feel better in this moment? And if that means stepping away from specific things for a while, I do. So, like, for example, I stepped away from social media. Like, really, my presence on social media has, for these last, since Tuesday, I just started stepping away from it. And I said, like, after we had our call on Tuesday, I just stepped away. I didn't want to have anything to do with social media. I've been very, very, very intermittent getting on and checking a couple of things, but for the most part, nothing. And it's been good, but it's been scary at the same time because you feel like you get that fear of missing out
Yep.
moment.
Yep.
And am I doing the right thing? But then I realized what's most important right now is my emotional well-being. So how do I honor myself? And that is I did three things. I wrote down three things. I know the first one was um, I'm not going to go on my social media for a while. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a break, a couple of days. I'm not saying I'm going to have a pity party for weeks, but a couple of days for me.
Yep.
I'm going to be not going to be really absorbing anyone else's content because a lot of that was taking away my time, and I felt like my time was being sucked dry, and so and that was part of because it just added to the flame already with the other issue I've been dealing with. And then the third thing was emails, the same thing. You get so many emails every day, and I thought I'm just gonna unsubscribe from some. I'm going to delete the others. And that was my way to honor me because I knew what did I need for me. And I think that's the kind of the key here is being okay around that isolation thoughts and feelings can arise, but it's how you actually show up for yourself in those moments. Don't allow yourself to go too deep into where you stay away from everyone. If you need to take time for yourself, absolutely take a couple of days. But then the next step would really be to reach out to people that care about you and let them know how you're feeling and that you just want to talk or you just need to vent or you just need them to hold space for you. Um, and so before we move on to independence, I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
That's actually exactly what I was going to do is transition that to independence because that's what I would call independence. When we take that isolation tendency or that desire or craving to isolate and we put some intentional thought behind it, we make some intentional decisions, we do on purpose some choices, we honor our boundaries, you might say, around that isolation. We don't let ourselves go into that deep dark place and say nobody wants to talk to me or I don't deserve it or whatever the case may be. We simply make some choices. Well, I don't feel happy or fulfilled or wonderful doing these things, so for now I'm going to back away for a day or a couple of days or a few days or whatever the case may be. But that's what I would call independence, because now we are taking care of our own needs. Whereas isolation is ignoring our needs, is ignoring our needs and the needs of others. And whereas independence is taking care of our own needs. And sometimes independence, taking care of our own needs, requires us to connect with somebody else who can take care of our needs better than we can. This is where coaching comes in. This is where some different kinds of partnerships come in, some different kinds of relationships come in. And so yeah, as part of that transition, that's exactly the truth. What you're talking about, I think, is the healthy way to do that. It is about creating some intentional choices about how I want to treat me, how I want to be treated by me. what I'm going to accept from me, and what I want to do for me. And that's how we transition, how we change our own habits from isolating, which is a negative lack of meeting our needs, to independence, which is a positive meeting of our needs. And therefore, we're only meeting our needs. We are not, like you said, inviting ourselves to a pity party.
Yeah.
If I have a need for some self time, some regeneration, or self discovery, or presence with self, that's a need, and I can do that. Maybe that might require me to go play some video games, or watch some Netflix, or read a book, or go for a walk, or something. But it's not isolation, because although I am not talking to other people, I'm taking care of a need that I have. Whereas isolation is ignoring my needs and doing something to distract me from my needs. So I love what you're talking about. I love this whole concept of writing down the three things, that you're going to do or not going to do, the decisions that you've made, that intentional, on purpose choice, coming from a place of self-awareness, of awareness of what you want, of what your needs are. That is what I would call the difference between isolation and independence. Independence is the ability to take care of self,
Yeah.
to
And you
take
can
care of meet our own needs. Yeah.
and you can transition from isolation into independence. And really, I know that you're saying, well, okay, so you're talking about making these decisions, being self-aware, but and of course, Andy and I both have been in this self-development space for quite some time. And so we've surrounded ourselves with people who really talk about this and support us in that. But if you're somebody who's like, okay, well, I'm new to this world, or maybe I don't really understand, like, how, when I'm in my feelings, I can't seem to get myself out of it. And it's really just being okay and not making it wrong. Like, just being okay that you're having these emotions, because emotions are natural. And then being able to just say, okay, like, I'm feeling this way, what's happening in my life, and not allowing that negative self-talk to take root, because I think that's where I had a lot of issues. And when I started learning that all I have to do is just ask myself, is that really true? Like, if I start saying that I'm not worthy or deserving to actually reach out to Andy, for example, because he will tell me that he doesn't have time for me for something so silly as my feelings, is that really true? No. But in my head at the moment, because if I'm feeling that feeling, it can, if you allow that to take root, then you might find yourself resisting reaching out for help. But having that talk with yourself, yes, having a talk with yourself, being
Yep.
able to say, what, this is what I'm feeling, how I'm feeling. What do I need? I mean, and is it really true, these thoughts that are going through my head as far as like how I feel about myself and how other people would look at me if I asked for help? It doesn't have to be true. You can actually, just, even if you don't 100% believe that it's not true, if you just simply deciding that it's not true,
Right.
will help you move forward into actually asking for help. Like, just saying it's not true, and I'm going to ask, and just allow yourself to push through that fear of asking. Because again, it's a lot of the time we put perceptions onto other people. We think other people are going to feel a certain way or are not going to support us, and that's not the truth. Because usually, or you can flip it yourself, you're the person someone's coming to. You would not turn your friend away, especially if you knew they were in time of need. So imagine yourself as that friend coming to you, and that you would hold that place for them, how you care about them and how you would, help get through it. Allow yourself to believe that your friend would do the same for you, because especially if you have long-term friends, people that have been in your life for a long time that you really hold close to you, most of the time they're saying, yeah, call me, or I'm here for you. And most of the time too, if you're saying that if you're saying all these negative things about yourself, they're usually the ones coming up behind you saying, that's not true, that's not the person I know.
Right.
And so it's just being okay to just acknowledge the fact that you're having these thoughts and feelings, asking yourself if these things have to be true. Even if you don't 100% understand whether or not they're true or not, because a lot of the time when you're in that deep, just allow yourself to decide, I'm going to decide it's not true, and I'm just going to reach out to whoever it is and say, hey, I'm going through this. Can you
Right.
help me through it?
Yeah.
And I know it sounds simple, and it's just having faith in yourself to just do it. Just jump. It's like jumping in with both feet and asking the question, can you hold some space for me? Can I need your help? Can you talk for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Can you meet for a coffee? I just really want to pick your brain about something, or I just need you to, be there for me. That's really, most people will say absolutely. But I think we just put in our head that they're going to automatically, we're already formulating that the answer is no, when that's not
Right.
necessarily the truth.
That's right. I agree with that. And I'm going to add an extra layer to that because sometimes it is true. Sometimes they do say no. And I used to have a couple of friends who would typically say no whenever I reached out for help. Our friendship was often one-sided, where they would ask for help from me, but they wouldn't necessarily return the favor. And so that's what helped me to, lend truth to this idea that nobody's going to help me anyway. And that's because I would choose friends who would specifically not help me. I was very specific about wanting to be the helper, not the one who was getting the help. So I wouldn't reach out or create friendships or create bonds with people who were also willing to help me, because I felt like I was always a victim, or I felt like I was always in need, or I was always, leeching on everybody and taking from people, and therefore I wouldn't make friends with those people who wanted to give me stuff or do stuff for me or be nice to me or generous to me. So if you have surrounded yourself with people who aren't helpful types, you might choose who you ask. You might think about who you ask for help, because if you're asking the person who's going to say no, then maybe ask a different person in your life. Chances are you still have plenty of people who, like you've said, will always want to say yes, or almost always want to say yes. They might say no a couple of times or once in a while, but almost always they'll say yes, I can help. And if you're most often reaching out to the people who say no, just ask a different person. And even if you do reach out to the people who say no, chances are they do want to help, they just don't know how. So if you reach out to them, oftentimes they don't say no every time, they only say no some of the time. And like you've said, we make that into they're never going to say yes, they're always going to say no. So it is the decisions we make inside of our head based on the experience we have. But the experience we have, it isn't based entirely on all of the experience we have. It's only based on the negative experiences. We only base those decisions and those choices on the negative decisions. And how we can switch from isolation to independence is by learning which friends will say yes most often. Ask those ones, which family you can go to for support, which people you can trust, which people will most likely say yes, and accept a no from those who don't. Even if you do say, reach out to somebody who normally says yes and they says no, they can't help, accept that. That's okay. Just don't make that the story that you tell yourself about what they do all the time. That's how we take care of our own needs. That's how we decide what our reality is. Like you said, even if sometimes they say no, we can decide, what's the story I want to tell myself? What is the truth I want to believe? Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. And in the moment, we'll often think they always say no. But like you said, ask yourself, is that really true? Have they actually never said yes? Because if they've never said yes, chances are they're not your friend. Chances are you don't even like them. Because we only like those people who've said yes at least some of the time.
And it's
And therefore,
also too,
yeah,
and I
therefore they
just want
have.
to add that for just one sec. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I did want to add to that. It is really about the friendships that we're forming too. Like,
Yeah.
who are you gravitating towards? Because are you gravitating towards people who actually are kind and generous to others? Like, I mean, you really do want to have friends like that. And you don't want to have friends who are only takers and they don't give. So yeah,
Right,
that's what I
and
think
that's
about.
and that's oftentimes a subconscious choice that we make. We don't know that we're making friends with only takers. We don't know that we're making friends. We're like, but we have this thing in common or that thing in common, and they like it, and I like it too. But if you look at it really really closely, it's probably you liked something because they liked it, and you begging hard to be your friend. This is my history. I'm only speaking from direct experience here. Um, I often made friends with people who didn't give because I wanted to be like them, but I wanted to give, which means I didn't want to be like them, but I wouldn't tell myself that. So when I started reaching out to the people who I knew would help and started realizing that the friends that I had weren't actually people who wanted to help, and started reaching out to the other friends because I did have other people in my life. I just wasn't as close to them because I couldn't help them as much because they weren't always trying to take. They would take care of themselves sometimes. So when I started reaching out to those kinds of friends, that's when I started realizing the worth that I have, the self worth that I have, the 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 needs that I can have met. I started going for coffee with people that I didn't know very well, that I had known for a while, but really hadn't been close to because I wasn't trying to. They wouldn't let me help them as much. They didn't need as much of my help because they were, kind and generous, and therefore they had lots of people in their life and not just me. I and that's that goes back to the choice, like I was getting into when you brought that point up. That like I was getting into, like you've said already, it comes down to the choice that we have. Is it the thought we have in our head? Is that the thought we want to have? Is that the thought that's going to give us what we want? Is it really true? Is it what we want? Is it going to give us the life, the friendship, the relationships that we want? Is it going to give me the relationship with me that I want? And if any of those is no, then change something, right? Change something.
And I think a lot of the fear comes down to change because as an example, I did work with a woman a few years ago where she felt like once certain layers had been, she'd let go of specific things and started having those healthy boundaries around relationships, meaning that these were meant to honor her, to actually honor so that she could have these healthy relationships. And she started doing this. She started feeling a little bit, I can't quite think of the right word, but it was a little bit of being uncomfortable in the beginning because her whole identity that she had adopted for herself was based around this whole persona that I only have friends like this who take, who are only come to me when they're in dire need. I'm giving everything of myself, but when I need them, they're not there for me. And that was her whole identity of how she lived. And when she started releasing some of those layers and started realizing, oh, that she's important too, and started actually asking for what she wanted and started building relationships around that, it was a work in progress because as she was doing that, she was still feeling like she'd lost something, a part of herself, because
Yeah.
she'd released it. And that's gonna and again, that could happen. It's a
Yeah.
truth because we're human. We're always gonna feel things, and something that you might not even realize could trigger you, that has triggered you in the past, and you never realized it, and you just have that moment. And like I said, I recently experienced that, just a moment where I got triggered in a specific way that was an old type wound. And so for me, it was, how do I manage this without it becoming me saying I'm not okay, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, I
Right.
can't get out of this. This is my life. This is the truth of it, and letting that be my party that I go into and go full on, and let that be my truth. So I could do that, and I did for about maybe a half hour. Truth be
Right.
told, I did it for about a half an hour, and then I realized, wait a second, I actually have a choice of how I let this thing, how I let it tell me how I'm going to live my life. Is it going to like be something that's going to affect me that I can't show up in the things that I want to do with my life? Or am I going to take responsibility? Because part of it is taking responsibility for letting myself go there and stopping it, and then being able to say, okay, this isn't what I want. It's not going to serve me. It's not going to like do for me the things that it's not going to give me any type of value for my life. So what do I got to do? What do I need? Again, I came back to that question. What do I need? When I was able to figure out, okay, right now, the social media decision that I made and the emails decision that I made had nothing to do with the actual incident itself.
Right.
But it was what I needed emotionally. I didn't want to have to deal with so that I could just take care of me. That piece of the puzzle, which was something that I had been so in and trying to like really do a good job with it, making sure I go live in my groups, this is for another topic, but just to say, like to stay doing what I do.
Yep.
Social media is part of it. Emails are part of it. But I knew that I felt like it was draining me. And so for me to heal me emotionally, I had to like find what are those things that are draining me right now that don't have anything to do with that, but will help me. And that's why I felt becoming intentional around making the decisions. What is that? Making a list, doing it, and just being okay. Like I said, there's the whole fear of missing out thing. Like, should I not be on social? It's this social media thing is it's an animal to itself, right? And we've talked about that. But I realized I needed that break. And even people were reaching out to me to ask me, "Oh, are you okay? Is everything all right?" I had to turn off because I had a browser open and I had to close it because I didn't want to see that right now. It was not helping me. So it's just really recognizing what do you need, because that's the biggest thing. When you can feel your own need and then reach out to other people to help you move through it, it's so much better, and you find yourself coming out of it a lot quicker and more healthy. You'll build healthier habits around it, and you'll find yourself not staying in that pity party, as we like to call it. And it's not to shame anyone, but we do it to ourselves. We have our own pity party. So I'm no different than you. Andy's no different than you are. We both have done that to ourselves, having our own pity parties, but we recognize the fact that we don't want to stay there. And so, that's why it's moving from isolation into independent thought around how you're going to move through something that's got you stuck or making you feel a certain way. That's the place where you want to go, so you don't isolate yourself from others and your life in general.
Right. That's exactly true. And as we transition from isolation to independence, we've talked a lot about isolation, what that means. We've talked some about what the transition from isolation to independent means. So what independence actually looks like is the ability to take care of one's own needs. And oftentimes we might become independent and end up with the same result as if we were isolating to the outside world. To the outside world, it might look exactly the same. I'm being independent. I'm taking care of my own needs. I'm doing what makes me happy, what fulfills me. And to the outside world, they might go, "Oh, are you okay? Like, are you upset? Is there something wrong?" When actually, I'm feeling better because I'm independently taking care of my own needs. And if I need support, I will reach out. And if I'm able to take care of my needs myself, then I'd rather do that. Sometimes the isolation causes us to not want to reach out, and sometimes the independence it's a safety net so that we don't have to reach out. It's when you don't want to reach out that you're isolating, and it's when you don't have to reach out that you're independent. Now, you won't have to reach out. You're independent when you can all by yourself feel emotionally stable, not turn to any of your vices or any of your habits that you use to shut down emotions or avoid something. When you can still keep up your your productivity or your work ethic or your quality of life or your quality of relationships, or you can still show up to whoever you're supposed to or that you've committed to. You can still honor yourself and your promises to other people and to yourself, when you can still give yourself and other people the life that you intended to, the life that you want to. That's when you can be independent. And an independent person might actually be away from the world longer than somebody who isolates. As long as their needs are getting met and the needs of those they love are getting met, then what's the need? What's the difference? With somebody who's independent, they don't have a desire to be alone. They just don't need something else right now. My needs are met. I'm happy and content. I'm doing well, and when I'm not, I'll reach out. And when I want to stop being independent and I want to go back to being interdependent, when I'm, collaborating and cooperating with other people, I'll do that too. An independent person doesn't need someone else, but wants someone else, wants other people in his or her life. That's the difference between isolation and independence. Independent people really like to have other people, but they don't necessarily need to have other people.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way of putting it for people to really get that distinction between the two, because, I think isolation is more harmful to us, but independence can be uplifting. Although you also want to make sure that if you are in that independent state, you're not pushing people away in the sense that, they understand that, hey, I'm good. Like, all is well. Because I can relate to what you're talking about with the independent, because I have had actually people reach out saying, is everything okay? You're kind of quiet. And it's like, well, I'm good and there's nothing wrong. But then again, that's just someone else's perception of what they're seeing, because I'm not actively perhaps being engaged on social media, or I'm not actively reaching out to other people. And so they might think there's something going on, but not necessarily true. Yeah. So I love the fact that you had, put the two, having that people understand the difference between the isolating and the independent thought. So, no, I love this conversation. I'm curious. I really would love to get some feedback from other people who might be, how they've actually gone through. Like, maybe I could ask you that question, because I've actually shared myself a most recent time for me. So we've talked about something recently a week ago, and I'm just curious, was that something that could have caused maybe the isolating feeling that your own experience?
It was on a border. It was much like your experience, where for a short time it was definitely isolation. It was definitely, a pity party, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And then, much like yourself, I asked myself some simple questions like, okay, what do you need right now? Do you really need to have this contact with somebody else? Is that something you want support, or is what you need to go off and do this thing by yourself? And sometimes I find it better to deal with it myself, and sometimes I find that harder to do. And as long as I can consciously, with full awareness of myself and my desires and my emotions, when I can consciously ask those questions and get a decent answer. So in this case, it was much like your own experience. I decided that I wanted to be by myself for a bit. I wanted to take care of things myself. And what that made it do is I was able to still honor all my commitments. I was still able to show up for the people that I had promised to show up for. Was able to keep all my promises, although some of them were more last minute commitments, things that I did, just prior to when I promised I would do them, but I did do them prior to when I promised. So as long as I was able to keep my commitments to other people and not break any of my promises to myself or to someone else, that's how I knew I was being independent versus isolating. When I'm isolating, I can't keep my promises to myself or to other people. When I'm isolating, I don't necessarily, you know, schedule calls or follow up with people or keep my promises. I don't necessarily do the things that I promise I'm going to do. When I'm independent, I might delay when I do those things, but I do eventually do them.
Mhm.
Right. So it's just about, like you said, asking myself those questions. For me, it was I had asked Andy, what do you want at this moment? And what I had said is, what I had decided is, I want to not deal with this stuff. I want to not deal with these commitments that I had made. They are commitments that are a few days in the future. I don't need to deal with them today, although normally I would deal with them today. And therefore, people have reached out to me and said, are you okay? And and I didn't always answer them right away. Much like what you were saying, I didn't always answer them right away. But when I did answer them, it was a succinct, self-aware answer of what actually I was going through and what actually I felt and what actually I thought I needed. And like you said, I did have that short period of isolation, and then I simply asked myself, what do I want? What do you want in the moment? And what I wanted in the moment was just to sit back and play some video games and watch some Netflix and choose what to do with my time. Like, really just have nobody else influencing my time. There are some days I really enjoy being single because I have nobody else I have to answer to. When I want to eat junk food in the middle of the night and stay up all night and watch Netflix, there's nobody going, are you coming to bed? I don't have to worry about that. Right. And then there are days, of course, when that's quite lonely. When that's, and those are the days that I reach out. This is part of independence. When I'm feeling lonely because I'm living alone, then I reach out to my friends and I reach out to my family and I reach out to those that I care about and those that care about me. And I get that connection. And that's another part of that independence, right? So it depends on what I'm feeling. And much like you said, it comes down to those choices. It comes down to asking ourselves those questions. What do I want right now? And if what we want is for somebody to pity us or to care about us or to show that they care about us, they can't do that if we prevent them from knowing that we're feeling this way. Mm-hmm. And if the first person you reach out to doesn't care because you've surrounded yourself with people who don't care, then reach out to somebody else. Reach out to somebody who maybe cares, but you haven't reached out to them for a while because they care. And you're feeling kind of like you don't want to be a pest or you don't want to bother them or you don't want to, whatever the thing is. Reach out to those people because they do care. There's a reason they care and they want to care. And sometimes all it takes is a few minutes conversation. I know I've done that in the past where I just had a 10-minute conversation, like you said. And there are times when I'll reach out to somebody and we'll get on like a 4-hour conversation and I'll feel really good afterwards. Mm-hmm. So just reach out. I mean, the worst that can happen is they say no. And that's what's already in your head anyway. Mm-hmm. And then anything that isn't that is better. Right. So just reach out.
Yeah. There's also recognizing too that if someone says no, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're saying a hard no to you, that they Correct. Don't want to be there for you. You also have to understand that people do have a life.
Yeah.
So if you're going through something and you need somebody, that's why it's really good to have a lot of good people in your life that you can reach out to. But if someone in your life is not able to hold that moment for you, and I mean, because again, you have to also be able to recognize that everyone has a life of their own, yep. And maybe they're going through something you have no idea. But it's just allowing yourself to be okay that, okay, this person's not available right now. Like add those words right now to the end of that sentence. They're not available right now.
Right now.
They're saying no, not at this time. They're not saying no, they're not saying never ever, unless that's the type of people that you are surrounding yourself with. Because again, it's just you have to really be intentional too about the people that you're surrounding yourself with. If you want to surround yourself with people who are emotionally unavailable, who are unavailable to you, whenever you need them to be there for you, but they're always there. They're always there asking with their hand out that they need your support. Then maybe it's time to take a look at those friendships, like, and look at the people that you're surrounding yourself with, and ask yourself what you really want. Like, as a friend, what would I want as a friend? Who do I want as a friend? Who am I as a friend to someone else? What do I give to? What do I bring to the table? And how do I want that to be reciprocated? And so, if you're not surrounding yourself with people like that, and you have people who are always taking from you, and they're always saying no, because again, the word always, I find is a very dangerous word.
Yes.
But if it is your reality, then maybe that's when you take a closer look at your friendships, so that you can start creating those friendships with people who really do want to be there for you, and that you would do the same for them. And then the people who are not always available for you, but always want you to be available for you, again, I'm using the word always in that sentence, then you can decide, having boundaries, having healthy boundaries of how much time you will give to those people. And it's not to say that you want to be mean to them, but it's recognizing that sometimes people aren't even aware that they are emotional takers and they don't give. They don't, sometimes they're just not aware of it. And so
most of the time.
Right. And so you want to be able to say, okay, look, this person might not understand. So instead, what I'll do is I'll give them, like, if I'm having a conversation and they bring the same, because, you have those people who bring the same issue every time and they don't deal with it because they want to feel that they have someone that will feel sorry for them. And I would rather someone say, hey, I feel for you, but here's a way for you to work through it, so you're not always constantly carrying. You're not constantly carrying that burden.
Yeah.
So it's just being able to recognize those friendships and being able to, like, say, okay, well, I'm going to put a little bit of a time limit on those people about how much time I give to them to have their pity party with me, and I'll give them ideas of how to work through it. And if they don't, and they keep bringing it to me, then I can limit the amount of time. But now I'm going to start recognizing what do I need and what do I bring to the table, and I want those types of friends in my life, and start building that. It's really important to be able to have that circle. Like, I truly believe it. Andy's part of, like, not only is Andy part of my entrepreneurial world as a coach, but I'm really bringing him into that closer circle of someone I can trust with how I feel, and I could talk to. And so he would be, I would feel like I could just reach out to you with anything. And so that's again, people don't know me that well, but I've always had a real issue with trust.
Yeah.
And so, and especially when it comes to men.
Yes.
So to have that relationship with you is very empowering for me, and I'm very grateful. But it's just recognizing that I know what I want, I know what I bring to the table, I know what you bring to the table, I know that is the dynamic that we share. That's why we're doing this together. Like, I felt very comfortable doing this YouTube channel with you. And so that's just being really super intentional about who I want to be in other people's lives, the type of people I want to surround myself with. And that way, when I am going through those moments where, like, as I said, most recently, getting into that moment where I'm feeling and I'm telling myself that I'm not worthy or deserving, I'm not safe. I did use those words. I'm not safe. I'm not okay. And then I realized, wait a second, that's not true. So what do I need? Again, Andy and I both said that. What do I need? What do I want? That way, and then after we do that, we can, if we're still in need, then we can reach out to our community. That's why it's important to have that community. So if you don't have that, you can still build it. Like, it's not like it's only special people get these communities. It's just starting to be more aware of who you surround yourself with.
That's exactly true. And it's funny that you said that, because I used to think that only special people that had those communities. I used to ask myself, and I used to pray, and I used to say, God, why do I not get to have friends like they have? And then one day it hit me. I'm like, well, that's because you give all your attention to those other people. And it was, and I've said this a few times throughout this conversation. I realized that I actually had those other kind of people, the generous and caring and kind and generous people. and compassionate people. I had those in my life. I just hadn't built much of a relationship with them because I was too busy giving all of my time and energy to those people who didn't give back. So I didn't realize that I had them, and I felt guilty for contacting them. I felt like I was less than them. I always felt less than or unworthy. And once I decided that, wait a minute, I've been giving all of my attention to these takers, and I haven't allowed these helpers to help me. That's when I decided that always wasn't enough anymore.
Mhm.
I'm going to try, I'll still give those takers some of my attention. Like you said, I'll put a limit on it. Not just my time, but my energy also. I'll put a limit on it. And sometimes that limit is bigger than it is at other times. Sometimes I have a lot of extra energy and time to give, and sometimes I don't have much at all. And it depends on how much I take care of me, how independent I become, how not dependent on other people I become, but how much I trust other people. Like you said, we've you and I've built pretty close friendship. We don't just collaborate on this YouTube channel. We collaborate on a lot of things, and we've shared some deep emotional connection as friends, not just as colleagues, as entrepreneurial colleagues, but as friends. Um, you know, and there's a level of trust there, and we have worked hard to have that. Um, both, I've worked hard to have your trust, and worked hard to trust you. Same as I feel on the other side of the equation, right? And this is because both of us at some point in our lives decided, wait a minute, I like people in my life who give, not just take. I like people in my life who want to create stronger relationships, not just with each other, but with other people too. Like, you and I aren't just creating this friendship between you and I. We are also creating friendships with other people. There are other people in our lives we're trying to create friendships with, trying to create closer relationships with, and we help each other in those ways too, right? We help each other to, with clients. We help each other with friendships. We help each other with family relationships. Because we can experiment and try out conversations, and we've learned how to be independent of each other, yet still trust and be interdependent as well, and learn how to be just ourselves and be authentic and be true. And I'll drop the odd f-bomb sometimes because that's who I am. Not on YouTube because that's like it that much. But generally speaking, in most of our conversations, we're authentic, right? We're truly who we really are, and there are some times when that doesn't necessarily match. But that's the whole point, is that we come to these conversations as authentic, and that's how you're not isolated. We can trust that we get to isolate sometimes. We get to be independent sometimes because the trust is there. And how you build friendships like this, like the one you and I have, is by looking around at your life, at those people in your life who maybe you have felt a little less than, or a little undeserving of, or a little like you're not good enough. Look at them, notice how they help other people, and put yourself into that helping circle. Let them help you. If they think you're being a burden, they'll let you know. And chances are they won't say that because you're probably not being a burden. Right?
Well said, Andy. And I think that we're going to leave it on that note. I think that is exactly it. It's just really developing those friendships, and you can do it. So we're at the top. It's been a really good conversation. I really enjoyed this one tonight. I think it's really interesting how we can plan it out, and then it just so happens that something will really actually get us right here right where we are. It will meet and actually support what we're talking about. So thank you for another amazing conversation. I'm looking forward to the next one, which will be the last Thursday of this month, I believe. We're going to be doing that, right?
It'd be 2 weeks from tonight, either way.
Yep, and I'm really excited to do that one, and it will close out the year. Wow, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
2024
Hey?
is almost over, but it's just life is beautiful, and if you can show up in your world on a daily basis, no matter what's happening, the good and the bad, and be able to just be in the experiencing of it and working through things, building those connections, having those people in your life that you support, that support you. You'll have those memories, those lasting memories of your life when you're at end of life and looking back and reflecting. You'll at least be able to say, I lived a really full life and I have all these memories. And you can even pass some of those down to the generation behind you. That could be a wealth of information that could help them navigate their world. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you for
for
the
hopping
conversation. I
in.
love
Yeah,
talking with you every time.
so good. Yeah, it was so good. I'm really looking forward to the next one. And we haven't really decided how we're going to end the year, so it's a spoiler alert for both of us. We have no
For us
idea.
too?
Spoiler alert, we don't know. So,
But we'll figure it out. It's always going to be good.
yeah, again, we never script these. We just have the basic. We have the title and the basic general idea of what we want to talk about. But that's it. So that makes it fun and exciting and real. It actually makes it more real to me. So
me too.
Thank you so much, Andy. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you for all of you who came out live and who are watching back. Remember to if you like this video, just press the like button. And if you don't want to miss out on any more of our videos, just hit the subscribe button so you won't miss the notifications for when we go live next. We hope you have a great rest of your evening, and we will see you guys again next time.
I'll see you next time, everybody. Thanks a lot.